Citizen soldiers of the Onaway Division. The 385th Infantry Regiment was a regiment of the United States Army whose story reflects the evolution of the American citizen soldier across two global conflicts. Most closely associated with the 76th Infantry Division, the famed Onaway Division, the regiment entered history during the final year of World War I and achieved its defining combat record during the closing campaigns of World War II. Though it did not experience the long attritional battles of earlier deployed units, the regiment fought in some of the most demanding conditions of the European War, proving its discipline and adaptability under fire. World War I. Formation in a nation at war. The 385th Infantry Regiment was constituted in 1917 following the United States declaration of war against Imperial Germany. As part of the newly organized 76th Infantry Division, the regiment was composed primarily of draftees drawn from New England, particularly from Connecticut, Maine, and Vermont. These men represented a cross-section of American civilian life: farmers, factory workers, clerks, and laborers, many of whom had little prior military experience. Training was conducted at Camp Devens, Massachusetts, one of the primary mobilization centers for the National Army. There, the regiment underwent rapid instruction in the fundamentals of modern warfare. Soldiers were trained in close order drill, marksmanship, bayonet fighting, trench construction, gas defense, and the discipline required for large-scale operations on the Western Front. The pace was intense, reflecting the urgent demand for trained troops as American forces began to arrive in France in increasing numbers. By mid-1918, the 385th Infantry Regiment had reached a basic state of readiness. Elements of the 76th Infantry Division moved overseas late in the war, but the regiment itself did not enter sustained frontline combat before the armistice of 11th November 1918 brought hostilities to an end. Personnel performed limited duties in Europe, gaining exposure to the operational environment before returning home. In 1919, as the United States rapidly demobilized its wartime forces, the 385th Infantry Regiment was inactivated. Although its World War I service was brief and largely non-combatant, the regiment's lineage, identity, and organizational framework were firmly established. The interwar years. During the 2 decades between the World Wars, the 385th Infantry Regiment existed primarily within the organized reserve. Like many National Army units created during World War I, it remained inactive but preserved on paper. Its colors, honors, and historical records were maintained, ensuring that the regiment could be reactivated if national necessity demanded it. As international tensions escalated during the late 1930s and global war erupted once again in Europe, the United States began preparing for the possibility of renewed involvement. That preparation became a reality after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. World War II. Reactivation and training. The 385th Infantry Regiment was reactivated in 1942 as part of the reconstituted 76th Infantry Division. Once again, the regiment was filled largely with draftees and volunteers from across the northeastern United States. Many of the men were older than those in early deployed divisions, bringing a level of maturity and discipline that would later prove valuable in combat. Training took place primarily at Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, where the regiment underwent an extended period of preparation. Instruction emphasized small unit leadership, coordination with artillery and armor, night operations, patrolling, and the aggressive offensive tactics required in modern infantry warfare. Large-scale maneuvers tested endurance, logistics, and command effectiveness, gradually forging the regiment into a cohesive fighting force. By late 1944, after more than 2 years of preparation, the 385th Infantry Regiment was declared combat-ready and ordered overseas. Deployment to the European theater. The regiment deployed to England in the autumn of 1944, where it completed final training and acclimatization. In November, it crossed the English Channel to France, entering the European theater at a critical moment. Allied forces had broken out of Normandy, liberated Paris, and driven toward Germany. But the enemy still possessed significant fighting strength, particularly in fortified regions and forested terrain. Unlike divisions that landed earlier and suffered heavy casualties in Normandy, the 385th entered combat during the war's final, but still extremely dangerous phase. Baptism of Fire, France and Luxembourg. The regiment's first combat operations occurred in France and Luxembourg, where German forces were conducting determined delaying actions. Fighting often took place in forests, small villages, and along narrow road networks. Enemy positions were well camouflaged, and progress was slow and methodical. Cold weather, rain, and mud compounded the difficulty of operations. The regiment's soldiers, many experiencing combat for the first time, quickly learned the realities of infantry warfare. Casualties were sustained, but morale held, and confidence grew as the regiment successfully completed successive missions. The Ardennes and the Winter War. In December 1944, the German army launched its last major offensive in the West, initiating what would become known as the Battle of the Bulge. The 385th Infantry Regiment was committed as Allied forces rushed reinforcements to stabilize the front. Although the regiment did not face the initial shock of the German breakthrough, it fought in some of the harshest conditions of the campaign. Bitter cold, deep snow, and constant enemy artillery fire tested physical endurance and mental resilience. Operations involved clearing wooded terrain, defending key road junctions, and supporting counterattacks designed to reduce the German salient. The winter fighting forged the regiment into a seasoned combat unit. Leadership at all levels improved, and the regiment demonstrated its ability to operate effectively under extreme conditions. The final drive into Germany. With the German offensive defeated, Allied forces resumed the advance into Germany in early 1945. The 385th Infantry Regiment crossed into enemy territory, participating in the drive toward the Rhine and beyond. Resistance varied from organized defensive positions to isolated pockets of determined troops. Combat during this phase included assaults on fortified towns, clearing operations in forests, and the capture of large numbers of prisoners as German units collapsed or surrendered. While the intensity of fighting gradually diminished, the danger remained real, and casualties continued to occur. By the spring of 1945, the regiment was operating deep within Germany as Allied forces closed in on the heart of the Third Reich. Victory and occupation. On 8 May 1945, Victory in Europe Day marked the official end of the war in Europe. For the men of the 385th Infantry Regiment, the announcement brought relief and reflection after months of continuous operations. Following Germany's surrender, the regiment transitioned to occupation and security duties. These included disarming remaining German forces, guarding infrastructure and supply depots, maintaining order, and assisting with the administration of occupied territory. The regiment also encountered the human cost of the war firsthand, dealing with displaced civilians and liberated prisoners. Post-war inactivation. In 1946, as the United States rapidly reduced its wartime forces, the 385th Infantry Regiment was inactivated. Its lineage was preserved within the Army Reserve, maintaining the regiment's honors and historical identity. As the U.S. Army reorganized during the Cold War and shifted away from traditional regimental structures, the 385th Infantry Regiment was eventually fully inactivated, its history retained in official Army records. The legacy of the 385th Infantry Regiment is that of the American citizen soldier brought to readiness through discipline, training, and shared hardship. Though it entered combat late in World War II, the regiment fought in some of the war's most demanding conditions, from the forests of Luxembourg to the frozen battlefields of the Ardennes, and the final advance into Germany. As part of the 76th Infantry Division, the regiment fulfilled its role in the defeat of Nazi Germany and the liberation of Europe. Its story stands as a testament to the adaptability, endurance, and quiet professionalism of the American infantrymen, men who answered their nation's call and carried it through to victory.